I want to start this episode somewhere solid. I want to start with discussing what happens after you've made that decision. And I'm going to start by sharing with you a story about someone that was one of my clients at one point, and this benchmark that they reached and the way that it plays into this moment after the decision. One of my clients, not too long ago, he finalized his divorce. And when I started working with him, he wasn't broken. He wasn't clueless. You know, he was very, very capable. He was just plagued by indecision. And on one hand of things, he knew his marriage was over. There had been conflict and destruction enough throughout the time that they were together that he just knew. He had that knowingness inside of him. He knew it wasn't coming back. But he just felt paralyzed about doing something about it. Simply put, he refused to choose. He just got stuck in that place of indecision. And so what happened is he hovered. He just kind of lingered there. And that hovering, it did something to him. His energy dropped. He started experiencing a lot of depression type symptoms. All of a sudden, what was normally something that he was very confident in, his confidence waned. He stopped feeling motivated to do the things that he used to find joy in. And basically, he was leaking power. Like every single day, he didn't decide. He was like I said, leaking power. It just would take it out of him. And here's the part that most people don't expect. The moment that his divorce was actually final, it's not that his life all of a sudden got easier or simpler, but he did. You know, when I go back and I look at the entire time of spending with him, there were these different sort of benchmarks. Whereas he got more clear about a decision, and then he would make it. And then he would analyze the resistance that he was feeling to make another decision, and so on and so forth. His confidence started returning, and now we're basically at the end of it. And he has a whole post-divorce life now that he has to deal with, but he's different. He's different. I don't know how to explain it. Like his energy's different. His posture changes when you look at him. His voice is different. He's more certain in the way that he speaks to himself, about himself, to others. It's as if his energy returned. And let me make sure I'm clear about something. This had nothing to do with the outcome. This had nothing to do with him actually getting the divorce. This was a result because he made a choice and he took action. He followed through with it. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Bryce Prescott, and you are listening to The Lab. And today we're going to be talking about the power of decision and the hidden cost of delaying that decision. See, when people come to me, either for podcast consulting or for coaching, and they say things to me like, I just don't feel motivated. I feel kind of depressed. I'm stuck. When they're sharing their confusion with me, I don't hear depression or confusion or feeling stuck or lack of motivation. What I hear is that they're hesitating. There's something that's going on in their life that they know needs to change. They know that they need to make that change and that something needs to happen. And if you strip everything away, they basically just don't want to have to choose that yet. And that is that creates a very specific set of symptoms. And we've kind of talked about them a little bit. Low energy, they feel irritability, their ambition goes away. They start to feel resentment toward the people in their lives, to think to themselves that they resent their own life. And then on the flip side, the way that people interact with them is people start to think there's something going on. And while that is all true and real, and for those of you that have that lived experience of seeing others in that place, as well as being that person where you're experiencing those symptoms of low energy and depression and all that, The real diagnosis of all that is that it's actually that they just need to decide something. Nothing has been decided. Their indecision it's not dramatic for them. It's not some sort of poison. It's just a dulling agent. It's the emotional equivalent of just standing there while your engine's running. You're just letting it run. And over time, that's just not good. So let's break this down, because as we talk about it, it means one thing, but there's some actual science here to consider when it comes to what's actually happening. See, simply put, your brain doesn't like open loops. When something important is unresolved, what happens is your mind will keep it active in the background. Like it's constantly there, scanning, revisiting, evaluating, like literally like a program that's running in the background of your computer. You're hearing the fan turn. You don't know where the energy's going, but it's always there. That's basically, with us and the way our brain works, what happens when we have an open loop. And that background, the processing of that background and the energy of it, it's costly. Like it's really draining, because even though you feel this lack of energy, it's not like you're busy, but you just feel the weight of it. And that's why people say, I'm so exhausted. I'm tired. I haven't done anything, but I'm still tired. It's because, simply put, your system, it's working overtime, trying to keep the energy necessary for that loop to be closed at the proper time. It's very predictable, actually, when you get into the brain science of this. Very simple. Like I said, the brain doesn't like open loops. When there's an open loop, it keeps resources available to make sure that it can give time, attention, and energy to that open loop. But in order to keep that open loop and the resources available to help it, it drains you of resource. Like how ironic is that? And now I want you to imagine that with like multiple decisions that you haven't made. Like let's say, for the sake of description here, you have an undecided life. There's a bunch of decisions that you haven't made. You're just kind of in limbo. You're hanging out. You got all these programs running at once, and they're draining you. All those closed loops. I mean, your proverbial battery is going to be down to nothing before too long. And unfortunately, that isn't changed by your mindset. No amount of mindset work can actually make that decision for you. That's mechanics. Like, you are the one that's required to make that decision. Now, this is where I want to be careful, but I want to be really honest as well. Because a lot of people, a lot of what people label as depression isn't sadness. It's a legitimate like depression. There's downward pressure, but it's basically stagnation is what it is. It's the grief of knowing a life is waiting on the other side of that decision, but you just won't make the decision yet. See, grief is the applicable word. Like, we experience grief. A lot of things are actually grief that we label other things. Grief is basically when you don't have a place to take the energy. So like when you lose a loved one, for example, that grieving process, it's not that your love has gone away for them. It's that you don't have any place to put it now. And that deficit creates that feeling of grief. The same thing happens in this decision fatigue type issue where, like, there's a decision to be made, but now all that tension and anxiety doesn't have a place to go because you're not making the decision. It's stagnation. Like I said, it's the grief of knowing that there is something else waiting for you on the other side of that decision, and you just won't make it. You're not mourning what you lost. You're mourning what you won't choose. Because the moment you choose, you then get to access all that other stuff. And now you have this desire to experience all that other stuff, whatever it is that's on the other side of the decision. But similar in the grief of a loved one, there's no place for this energy to go. So it just sits there like still water. And it's not good. Your nervous system equates that to powerlessness. And that's why you experience all that, because there's all of this inner resource, attention, thoughts, rumination running in the background, depleting you. And in that powerlessness, that's why it shuts down your motivation. And that's why your emotions get weird. And that's what makes you numb, actually. Now, I want to make sure something's clear. It's not because you're broken. It's that you're just in the middle. You're just in this place of stalling between two lives. The one you have now and the one that you won't choose. The reason why this is coming up for me is because as I review my life in the last several decades, really, I see specific moments where I've lived this over and over again. More than I care to admit, but I'm an open book here. So I want to share the things that are important to help you as you listen to this to avoid some of the things that I've dealt with myself. There have been seasons of my life where I have delayed decisions and then I got angry about it. I remember one of the biggest battles I had with God was because of that. I had been praying very specifically for guidance on a very important decision that I was going to make for my life. And I would get these different answers from God, and sometimes these answers would contradict themselves. One would be one way, and then it wouldn't happen, and then it'd be the other way, and it wouldn't happen. And I would sit here in the middle of it going, what the ever-living fuck? Like, what is going on? And it made me resent God, actually. I was not only angry at my own circumstances, I got angry at the timing of everything. I was pissed off at God because I wanted clarity first. I wanted to know the outcome first without having to risk the making of the decision and the taking of the action. I wanted a guarantee before I could do that, before I was willing to do that. And that's just not how life works. That's not how your brain works. That's not how spirit works. And what I slowly learned, and this was a very painful, over and over again learned lesson, was that I was asking God to micromanage my life. Now, as I use the word God, you can use the word manifesting, you can use the word universe, whatever that thing is and however you label it, that's that force that's bigger than you, the idea that's bigger than you, that's what I'm referring to. God wasn't going to sit there and micromanage my life. How could he when I was the creator of my life through these decisions? He was never going to tell me what move to make next. He just wanted me to choose. And in that choice then, it didn't have to be a perfect choice and it didn't have to be without fear and it could have been clunky. It didn't matter. But honestly, that's where I learned the guidance comes. If you're seeking guidance outside of like from a spiritual place, it comes far less easily before you make the decision and way, way easy after. And that's where I had it wrong in several of the decisions that I have delayed in that way, is that I was chicken. I didn't want to make the decision because I was scared of the outcome. It was going to require something of me that it wasn't easy. It was going to require a level up of me, a growth of me. I was going to have to expand my capacity. It scared me. The risk was there. That scared me. And so I wanted some sort of assurance on the front side, and it never came. And it wasn't until after I made those decisions and walked out of the light, so to speak, into the darkness, that the light shifted, and now I was no longer in the darkness. If that makes sense. That's how I got relief. That's how I got my answers, that I allowed myself to realize God's not here to make every choice for me. He'll be there once I choose to help me make sure I've got what I need at that point. And I recognized as I evaluated my own experience, that was what was happening in those moments. I was not left alone. I had connection to spirit. I had the ability to think and to discern, to help myself make the best choice, but I was never given the nudge. I had to be the one to do it on my own. Now, that reframe Well, actually, let's talk about that. See, here's the reframe, the specifics of that reframe that changed everything for me. Choice is not just practical. I'm going to do that because it makes sense. That's logical. It's an existential thing. Choice is existential. Agency is how we as human beings regulate ourselves. We have the ability to choose, and then those choices come with consequences. There is a direct line. When you make a choice, it has a consequence. And your nervous system calms it down when it senses a direction. The psyche then stabilizes when it senses ownership. So there's these layers inside of us that make it to where once we make the choice, we start moving in that direction, that the calm starts to come in. And that's why even seemingly massively big, painful decisions even can bring relief. It's because the hardest part to deal with all of this is the ambiguity. It's being directionless. It's being in concept. Well, I know what I want to choose. I have an idea of what it's going to be. I'm not sure. But by staying there in the middle, it's an ambiguous place, and it will not bring peace. In fact, the longer you stay there, the harder you make it on yourself to ever have the courage to make that decision. See, in my case, it wasn't that God was withholding answers. He was just waiting for some movement by me to go in a direction. And the decision was the act of faith that I needed to do. And the action was then that faith embodied. I was in motion. All of those things are connected. The action, the decision, the motion, the belief. But it all starts by making the choice. Now, in this, though, there's a lie that exists about motivation. There is a motivation lie. And that is that most people are waiting for motivation before they make that decision. They want that fire in their belly. They want to feel that sort of pull towards that thing. Motivation doesn't work that way. That's backwards, actually. See, motivation follows the decision. The actual sequence looks like this. You start with your decision. You then take ownership of that decision and you take action then. You have movement. The movement then sparks energy because you're in motion and you're doing the thing to which you felt was best anyway. And that then increased energy creates motivation. So decision, ownership, movement, energy, and motivation. Now, the anecdote to this, the way to lose it all is to wait. Waiting is what drains your power. Choosing generates it. And to go back to the story about my client, that's why he felt better once he kept making those decisions and taking action and making those decisions and taking action all the way up to the point now to where his marriage and his divorce is final, and he is experiencing a different level of emotional ease and relief in his life because now that has been put to bed. There's no more encumbrances. If he was to choose to get into another relationship, he's got the legality of his divorce final so that everything in his business can be what it needs to grow. He knows what he's on the hook for with the terms of that divorce. He has peace, but he was scared to do it. And after he did it, this happened. His agency returned, and that gave him fuel. Now, here's the unspoken truth in all this, is that a wrong decision that you take ownership of is actually far more powerful than a delayed perfect decision. See, let's make this real. Here's where people delay making decisions most. There's just a couple of them. They stay in relationships that they're checked out of emotionally. They tolerate boundaries that they resent. They wait to change their career until it's too late and they've already outgrown what could have been. They refuse to step into a new version of themselves because they're scared of the effort that it would take. And another one is that they keep their options open to avoid disappointing others. They're really lacking commitment. They're a nice guy, as they're called. And in each one of those scenarios, the body always knows the difference. Like your nervous system knows before your mind will even allow you to admit that you're wrong. I want you to consider that. Your nervous system, your body, the way that it feels, anxiety, fear, depression, it's telling you that even before your conscious mind is connecting the dots to know what's going on. I've talked about that a lot on this show, that your emotions are just signals. They're transmitting something out there for you to interpret. And in that interpretation is an answer. It's kind of crazy. Now, here's where I want to land on this. Let's do a little bit of auditing, right? If you're listening to this and you made it this far, thank you for being a part of the lab here with me. I want you to consider, ask yourself, like check in with your body right now. Do you feel tired? Do you feel just flat, unmotivated? Do you feel disconnected in your life? Like it's just not working? Now, before you decide what that means, I want you to ask yourself a simpler question. And that question is this: what decision am I avoiding? Pretty simple. What decision am I avoiding? What decision have I been unwilling to make? What decision am I scared of the consequences of? What hard conversation am I unwilling to have? What action am I unwilling to take? What decision have I been avoided? What choice have I delayed that's costing me every single day my energy, my peace of mind, my motivation? The crazy part about this conversation is that it doesn't take certainty to choose. You just have to have the capacity to choose, which is your agency. And every human being has agency. You can choose right now. You don't need permission. You don't need ownership. You have those things. It's you. No one is sitting here waiting to tell you what to do. It's just time for you to act. Because your decision doesn't guarantee your success, but it does guarantee movement. And there's power in movement, and there is ease in movement. There is enlightenment. There is relief in movement. The movement is the point. Because one of the unspoken and misunderstood parts of the law of attraction, for example, is that you have to be in motion for it to work. If you have a desire to attract something into your life, you have to be in motion towards that thing for the arrangement of the parts and pieces necessary to make that thing show up in your life. And so, simply put, movement is the linchpin. And the doorway into your movement, or another way to say movement is taking action. The doorway into that movement of taking action is a decision, is a choice. And that is about as real as it gets. You choosing that and allowing movement, it will give you back you. Or even better, it will help you to finally know you, to feel at ease as you. It will help you to relieve yourself of the need to impress everyone, to take action for other people's needs and not your own. It will allow you the strength to finally put yourself first. It's a yin and a yang. It's a chicken or the egg, but it starts with the decision. The decision is a doorway into the movement. And so in the answer to that question that I posed to you, what decision are you delaying? What decision are you avoiding? Look at it with reality, with discerning eyes, with critical perspective. Choose, take action, own it. It's pretty on point. Now, if there's one thing that I want you to take from this episode, it's this. that indecision is not a neutral place. Every day you delay choice, you're spending energy protecting a life you already know you're not going to live. And that cost shows up quietly. It's in your motivation, it's in your mood, it's in your sense of direction. You don't feel lost because you lack information. You're feeling heavy because you've been carrying that unanswered question for too long. Most people aren't waiting on clarity. They're waiting to be relieved of their responsibility. They don't want to be on the hook for the decision. And that's an impossible way to live. It doesn't work that way. God is not going to micromanage your next move. He's not going to give you certainty first. He's waiting for you to choose and to take ownership of your life and the consequences of your choices. And then providence will show up, because it feels like abandonment before that, but it's not abandonment. Consider the fact that God is respecting you to make a choice, regardless of which choice you make, because he's already given you the power of agency to do so. It's in your agency that you get your power back. A decision doesn't guarantee the outcome that you want, but it does restore something more important. It activates your self-trust. It gives you direction again through momentum and energy. And you will feel it immediately, not because life will get easier, but because you stop leaking power. And that's the whole point. So here's a question that I want you to sit with as we adjourn. What decision are you avoiding that in your body you already know the answer to? You don't need to choose perfectly. You don't need to overanalyze and ruminate about every pro and con. You know. Trust yourself to know. And then just choose honestly. But choose. And watch what comes back online for you in your life. That's all I got for you guys today. This is The Lab. There's, of course, an invite for you to join me on my weekly coaching group called The Lab as well, where we dive into the reality of all those things, working through them as a community. If you want to check out what that is, just DM me the word lab on my Instagram account or go to lab.bryceprescott.com. And there's a mechanism there to get you invited. What I hope you take from this today is just choose. Make the decision. Do the thing you need to do. And watch how everything will change for you in a beautiful way. This is The Lab. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott. And like I always say, until next time, take it a day at a time. I'll see you.